Okay, hi everyone, and welcome to our writing workshop, which is partnered with the 44 North for our upcoming essay contest. And very excited to be here, very excited to share a little bit about what Matthew and I have learned about essays as we've been writers over the years. Um, and just a couple quick notes for everyone who's going to watch the recording. You will be able to share Q&A questions if you'd like when the video is uploaded to YouTube. And we will kind of keep watch and answer as we can. That can be questions related to what we share today or questions related to the contest. And we'll keep an eye on it. And I'm trying to think any other housekeeping things. I don't think so. So we'll do quick introductions and then we will go through a few talking points and examples related to writing essays. And so, without further ado, hi everyone. I'm Mikaela. I'm a senior editor at the 44 North, and I am also very, very grateful to be one of the guest judges for the upcoming essay contest. And I always like to share a little bit about kind of my teaching ethos, some things that I lean on when I do things like this. And so I'm gonna quote a little bit from Gabby Cavalcaresi, who is one of my favorite writers. And something that she says that I really love is this idea of foregoing a sense of hierarchy and kind of paying more attention to literary lineage and ancestry, neighbors, kind of like the way that mushrooms are linked to mycelial cells. I find that really fascinating. And kind of the idea that decentering the self doesn't necessarily mean you're foregoing identity or foregoing authority, sorry. And, writing as a way of kind of hearing our collective voice through the words of one who decides to generously witness and participate. So offering the self through kind of how you witness.
Mm.
So that's a little bit about me. I will pass it over to Matthew.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Matthew Dawkins, and I am a author and poet. My debut novel, Until We Break, was published in 2022, which is the years are really piling up there. And I have my Bachelor's of Arts from Western University, where I studied English literature, and I was also the student writer in residence. And alongside my novel, I published poetry in a number of journals as well. And likewise, I am really excited to also be a judge for the 44 North's essay competition. And to share a little bit about kind of my thinking when it comes to feedback. And I've always had this for a number of years when I was student writer in residence. I would often give feedback to students. And I think from that era, my thinking has evolved and it's kind of morphed into a kind of core belief that we're all in one way or the other creative. And I think in this scenario, I think it's a good way to think that we all have a story to tell. And I think sometimes creativity, especially in academia, is structured to look a certain way. And there's oftentimes where you can feel like there's oftentimes a binary of what's good and what's bad and what makes something good and what makes something bad. And I think like the beautiful part about writing or any other like art is its subjectivity, which is to say that I think we all can identify and relate to different forms of art and how it ends up shaping in the way that it shapes. But I see myself as not necessarily a critic or someone to say it's good for this reason or it's bad for this reason. When I give feedback and when I engage with artists, writers, non-writers, etc., I try to think of myself as helping you get to the most honest version of the story that you're trying to tell, the most honest version of the art that you're trying to create. So the vision that you have in your head of how to execute it, how do we get that in the real world? And so it's not good or bad, but it's honest and it's real and it's exactly what you had in mind. I think that's way more important. So yeah.
Love it. I love it. Okay. So now I will share my screen so you all will be able to see the kind of packet and notes that we put together, which you will also have access to with the recording. So no need to kind of furiously take notes. You will have access to what we're going to share. So let me do that. This is always the fun part.
Oh, it's a sharing of the screen.
Oh, goodness, 2020 got us down a path, didn't it? Okay, here we go. Okay, this is our fancy notes here.
Hmm,
And Matthew, I'll pass it over to you to
thank
say your
you.
piece, and then yeah, I will jump in.
Thanks. So basically in this packet we have, like Mikaela and I thought of like what are some really key pieces of advice that we think are integral in essay writing, and also think of what we'd be looking for as we judge some of the submissions as well. And picking from experience and picking from authors and writers that we look up to, these are kind of some of the central ideas that we had in mind. And things that we'll be looking for from your submissions, but also things that we think are like, in our opinion, make some of the most impactful writing that we've read super impactful. So I'm coming from a creative writing background, as I kind of explained before, so that's why I use the word plot here, but it's not necessarily limited to creative writing at all. I feel like whether fiction writing or nonfiction writing, there are often primarily two ways to approach it that we can think of, which is the battle of outlining versus not outlining. And I think, and this is something that I often came across when I did nonfiction writing, I think because it's nonfiction, we can be like, oh my gosh, I need to be so serious. And I need to, for those of us who know Zotero, raise your hands. I need to pull up Zotero, which is like a reference library. But right, okay, Michaela gets it. I need to pull up Zotero. I need to open, the tabs and go to the library and do all the research and things. And it can feel very daunting in that way. Um, which, can be a good and a bad thing because it means that you care. But also, I find that it's also just as valuable if you forego all of those things and you just write and go all in. So it's not so that there are two kind of, not to say that there's one way that's better than the other, sorry, but that there are like benefits to both. When I think of going all in, and I think some of the reasons like why we feel like we're not able to do that when it comes to nonfiction writing is because we think it might be too personal. Like we might be inserting ourselves too much into the work or be as ah,
It's been recording, so I think we're
okay.
okay. I'm not sure. The
I hope
voice,
it's
that
been
voice
recording.
was so delayed.
It was very delayed. Okay. Well,
Uh,
Zoom, what can we say?
Welcome AI Zoom voice to our class.
To our thoughts. But no, so we can think that we're making it too personal and that's a bad thing. And I don't think it's a bad thing, especially when we think about like the prompts for the 44 Norths, essay writing competition. We're looking for passion in something that you care about. And if you care about it, chances are you have something to say on it already, and you don't need to necessarily at this point in time validate that or compare that to someone else's thoughts. I think it's just as valuable to start by writing down your like immediate first feelings, and ideas and concepts. And that way they kind of remain untainted by outside influences that you might stumble across when you do begin researching. And on the opposite side, obviously, when you're researching and outlining, that just gives you the benefit of structure, which can also be really valuable. And I think that like if you're facing something as like a really big and overwhelming topic, like something that's shaping the world globally or like a political issue, sometimes it is important and necessary for you to be like, okay, I actually kind of feel like this is such a huge topic and I want to do it justice that I want to at least sit down and think about the main points that I want to hit and like the type of research at least that I want to be looking for. And that way an outline can also be useful. So it's not necessarily about like picking the best option, but it's knowing that these both options exist and are available to you and both have their benefits. and it's about picking which one most aligns with you and your process.
Awesome. I love it. And to build on that a little bit, we have an example. Um,
Mhm.
and I love this essay, and it's actually on Substack. So it's not something that's kind of been published by a um, major literary journal or anything, but I think that it really speaks to kind of what Matthew's saying about um, structure and having that be very much intertwined with kind of the intimacy of your voice and how those can play off of each other in a really interesting way. And so I have an excerpt here of When Curiosity Still Centers Whiteness, and a couple really quick things I want to point out about it. There's a lot of one sentence lines, which you're kind of taught is a no-no. And I think they can be incredibly powerful if they're placed
Mhm.
well and they're connected to your story and what you're bringing into the essay. In this essay in particular, there's a lot of like experiential community-centered language. And so I think that's also very much tied to your voice and what you're bringing to the essay. And then for structure, we kind of move through these main pillars of the cost of explaining, comfort of misunderstanding and discomfort of misunderstanding, where there's, a need or not a need to convince, and then limits of curiosity. So there's some very clear kind of road marks to take you through the essay for something that's structurally maybe a little bit different than what you're used to. So I can read really quickly, maybe a quick excerpt of this. Let's see, where do I want to start? Maybe we'll go here, and then you all will have access to this to read it afterwards. Curiosity isn't evil, it's just incomplete. Remember the pin I asked you to place earlier. We're here now. So you can really see the voice coming through here. It looks outward when it should look inward. It prioritizes the wants of the oppressive forces while slowly robbing the oppressed of their dignity. So I like this little section and wanted to point it out because you're seeing a commentary on something that's happened that they've brought into the essay, that the authors brought into the essay, but then also a very strong voice and personal experience that's kind of connected to it. And each paragraph is its own sentence. But that serves the essay for what it's trying to do in terms of taking you through almost like punches over and over and over again, of how the author's relating to what's happened and the critique and other points that they're bringing in. So, all of that to say, when you're outlining, you're creating structure, you're thinking about plot, you can definitely be creative with your voice and how that's connected to um, what it is tangibly, I guess, that you're trying to say. Awesome. Back to you, Matthew.
Okay. Okay, and one more thing I wanted to add as well, because I just feel like I wanted to say it earlier and I forgot, and it definitely came back to me, Mikaela, when we were running through that. But I think like
Yeah.
on the topic of like personal voice and self-inserts and curiosity, like I want to encourage folks to also allow yourself to be surprised. Like that, I think is the beauty. Like even when you're, let's say for example, you're outlining, even if you're outlining and you have like that thought that's like, I wonder if I would include that. Or you're at a library and you're like, you see a book and you're like, that's interesting, but that's not related to my thing. Or like you're scrolling, you know what I mean? Like allow yourself to be surprised and to go on tangents and to explore because the truth is like when you surprise yourself, you will surprise us. And like that's like you want to maintain like for me, like all writing, like well, maybe not all, but a lot of writing is playful and like you want to keep I guess the easiest way I can describe it is if you feel bored and a little overwhelmed and exhausted when you're writing your essay, like that's easy to see through, like those are the emotions that you're inputting. But if you're like opening yourself up to being creative and to being curious and to being surprised and expressing yourself honestly, like that's what we'll read through as well. So whether you're outlining or not outlining, like open yourself up to like surprising yourself. Because I think like that's what makes writing impactful as well. Okay,
Absolutely.
right?
I second that. I second that.
Okay, good. Oh, okay. And then number two, writing about the mundane, mining your life for inspiration. So again, I think here, like, and this happens, I'm sure, to all of us. Like, it's like, my life is so boring. Because I think we place ourselves, because we've gone through these experiences, it's so easy to be desensitized by it or like cringe a little or feel like, oh my gosh, this is not something that I ever share, or this is not something that I find interesting at all. When really, it's what makes you human. And like, the beautiful part about being human is that we can all relate to the human experience, human condition, and that's what will also help to give your essay oomph and what will help you like hook an audience. So this is also to say that sometimes there can be experiences in your life, and you definitely know them, that have shaped your perspective and your point of view on the topic or the issue that you'll be writing about. And don't be afraid to tap into those. Maybe you don't want to tell the whole story, fair enough. But if you're comfortable sharing some of it, that could also be a very useful point to drive your essay home for someone to like see your point in a new way. Because you're writing from your perspective and from your experience, but the audience doesn't know that experience. If you feel like it could add something new and open the conversation a little wider and you're comfortable doing so, that's my encouragement to, again, open yourself up to surprise and mind your life for inspiration, and look back at the moments that have stuck out to you.
Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely. And I think like perfect lead into the example I wanted to share because I think it's so much about like how you see the world, how you've experienced it, because only you see it in the way that you do. Nobody else can. And you're inviting us into it when you're writing, as when we're reading what you've created. And something I really love that I believe Linda Gregg was the first to mention this, but the idea of a resonant source. And so a quick example just for me is, something you wouldn't think is connected to writing at all or my writing career is that I played basketball for most of my life. And I find that it's still very much my most powerful kind of toolbox of metaphors and, image choices because it was such a huge part of my life. And I bring that into my writing in interesting, strange, unusual ways. And I will read a really quick excerpt also from The Art of Finding, which was by Linda Gregg, where she first mentioned resonant sources. And so this is a very good example of her resonant sources. And let's see, I won't read the whole bolded section here, but I'll read a little bit of it just so you can get a feel. Okay, so for example, I am made of the landscape in Northern California, where I grew up, made of my father's uninhabited mountain, where my twin sister and I spent most of our time as small children, with the live oak trees, the stillness, the tall grass, the dry smell of the hot summer air, where the red-tailed hawks turned slowly up high, where the two of us alone at 10 did the spring roundup of my father's 26 winter shaggy horses. Down below, there were salmon in the stream that ran by our house, the life of that stream and the sound of it as we lay in our bunks at night, our goat and the deer standing silently outside in the mist. So many mornings when we awoke. So she goes on to talk about, different places that she's lived and traveled. And she mentions here um, that these are kind of present as essences. And I'll read this last little section because I think it captures it really well, what she was trying to mention. They operate invisibly as energy equivalents, touchstones, amulets, buried seed, repositories, and catalysts. They function at the generating level of the poems. She's talking about poems. This is also true for essays, to impregnate and pollinate the present, provoking, instigating, germinating, irradiating in the way the lake high up in the Sierra Mountains waters the roses in faraway San Francisco. So, a very beautiful essay. Definitely recommend reading the full thing. It's not super long, but I think just really speaks to all of us having very unique images and metaphors that we can pull from things that only we've experienced and through the way that we uniquely see the world.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I love that. Love, love, love. Okay. And our kind of third one here. We have two more. So this is three, and then we have four. Is using literary vehicles to drive your point home. As you can see, like there's some literary like devices going on there. Get it, vehicles, drive. Anyway, so as a creative writer, like this is something that I don't want to say. I don't want to say looking out for because I don't want to give people a rubric, but something that like impacts me a ton when I like read, and that's like how again how playful people are with language. Um, and I guess what I'm trying to say is like it's not something that you need to overuse or think too hard about oftentimes. Like kind of as Mikaela was just saying just now, like with the quote, like we often have those experiences or those metaphors that are already metaphors that are fully realized in our head from our own experiences, those touch points, those gems, those like buried feelings that we can already resurface. So I find that if you're writing from a place of passion, those things will often come through, whether it be symbolism or a metaphor or a simile or personification or pathetic you know what I mean? Like whatever it is, like you're writing about something that you're passionate about, these things will oftentimes come through. And I guess my point is to not shy away from that. Again, what that can often comes when oh my God, I'm writing a nonfiction essay and my sources and I need to cite and oh my God, it's so serious. Don't please be playful and please your passion is a strength and it's not a weakness, I guess is my main thing. And yeah, we talked a little bit about perspective earlier as well, which is the fact that your experiences, I think, are what shape your point of view. And for us to step into your point of view, your experiences can be like a very beautiful avenue for that to take place really well. Literary advice also touched on. And then pacing. So this kind of also we talked about earlier when we saw like those quick sentences and how it gives you like those punches. Like I'm thinking about poetry and meter. Like those things are also very important. Like we think about structure in writing and the paragraphs and oh my God, my intro and then the conclusion and this is the body. And sometimes in order for your essay to flourish and your passion to come through and your again back to my like note on teaching, for your idea to be fully realized, it's important that you like break those rules. You know what I mean? Break the rules and have fun. And the strength, your essay is more important than like, and how you envision your essay is more important than the structure of what people expect when they read an essay. Um, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. And I
I
think
feel like I'm just on like, I don't like a soapbox and I'm just like preaching at people. But that's I guess that's my passion coming through, guys.
yeah, no, we love it. Absolutely. Like I think it's so important too to remember like there's a ton you can look up online like literary devices and like ways to weave them in, but I think really at least for me I think they function as sort of like an offering of a hand or a handshake for what you want to say to come through.
Mm,
Because I think in an essay in particular, your narrative voice, of course, is a little bit different than the way you would write a poem or write fiction. But there is similarity in that you have to invite your reader in and earn that invitation. And sometimes that's through directly what you're quoting, like if you're, mentioning a source, like something that you're citing, versus how you're going to weave that into the broader argument you're trying to make or broader message you're trying to convey, and how then that's connected to all that we've been talking about, especially around your voice. And so couple of examples. I have a few more for this one because this is also my favorite part. Um, Bringing in different kinds of tools to kind of bring your essay to life. And so the first example I have is kind of using images to enact emotion. And I won't read the full passages for each one, but this is a beautiful essay, very, very short, but essentially about, you know, the heart and like how easily it's, oh, like hurt and how we feel and all of those kinds of things, but using the hummingbird. And so, really quickly, I'll read the first kind of section of this. Okay. And I still don't know how to pronounce the title of it, but it's here for you to read if you'd like. Okay. Hummingbirds, like all flying birds, but more so, have incredible, enormous, immense, ferocious metabolisms. To drive those metabolisms, they have race car hearts that eat oxygen at an eye-popping rate. Their hearts are built of thinner, leaner fibers than ours. Their arteries are stiffer and more taut. They have more mitochondria in their heart muscles, anything to gulp more oxygen. Their hearts are stripped to the skin for the war against gravity and inertia, the mad search for food, the insane idea of flight. The price of their ambition is a life closer to death. They suffer more heart attacks and aneurysms and ruptures than any other living creature. It's expensive to fly. You burn out. You fry the machine. You melt the engine. And so it kind of continues on with, creating a sort of feeling when you read that of what the hummingbird as an image, how it speaks to our human experiences of what our hearts do under stress and under heartbreak and under pressure. And so using an animal or using another form of image can be incredibly powerful to create the feeling that you want to convey connected to the argument that you're making. Okay. My next example, this one's quite long, so I'm not sure if I'll get to reading a bunch of it, but this is Insurgent Hoop by Ross Gay, and I had to bring it in here with my basketball background. It's probably my favorite essay of all time. But essentially, it's about Ross's experience, playing pickup and how pickup basketball is very, very different than, what we see on television and what's marketed and all of the kind of big hype, and the way that pickup builds community, and looks just very different in terms of how it's played, the language around it. And so I think what I wanted to mention here with this example is kind of connecting and braiding place and other people, location into your essay as depth. So it just adds a layer of location that you're inviting your reader into. And so let's see which section I'll read here. Let's see. Maybe I'll do the first one, the first section here. So before this section, I believe he's on a hike and he's leading that into explaining pickup basketball. But before we got on the trail 10 hours ago, we were at an outdoor outfitter's place. They take your keys and drop your car to the end of the trail for you. And directly behind their place was a pond you could hear before you could see it because of the frogs croaking. It was green and scummy with algae, pierced with cattails, elderberry on the verge of blooming. And as I walked by, I could hear but not see the frogs plopping from the muddy shore into the muck. I needed to pee, so walked to the other side of the pond to a trail into the woods. And as I was relieving myself, I saw a sign maybe 10 feet away that read, "Private property, no trespassing for any reason. Violators will be dealt with swiftly and to the fullest extent." And I'm going to skip ahead to the end a little bit here because I think he mentions it again, brings that sign back in. I'm trying to, yeah, here. with, oh gosh, how do we say this word? Raucous, bird song?
Raucous, I think. Yeah.
Raucous? Okay, bird song. Mustn't disturb the dreams of those who think they can own the world, for even their dreams must be guarded against trespass. Maybe their dreams especially, and as such must be dealt with swiftly and to the fullest extent. Which means on a court, in a school of elsewhere, in the kingdom of joy, they had to take the rims down, which means once again, we would have to find each other elsewhere. Meet you there. So phenomenal, phenomenal essay, but just I wanted to kind of show you like how place is pulled into this and woven through because we were talking of now we're talking about basketball, we're talking about pickup courts being bulldozed and taken away to build high rises for rich people. And so looping the place that we started with in the beginning of the essay into the ending is very creative, but also just another way to create that depth. And the very last example I have for this section is kind of showing your witnessing, which I know I mentioned a little bit in my teaching ethos, but this is really just like sensory and answering some of these questions of like, where are you? Is it night or day? What year is it? Your five senses, are you alone? What happened right before the moment that you're speaking about? What's happening in that moment? What are you thinking about? Starting with some of these, I think sometimes is really helpful too for outlining and just kind of getting into the rhythm of what you want to say, creating a sense of place, but also it helps you find your voice because it's showing you how you paid attention at the time and what you witnessed, which I think is really helpful. And you might end up keeping a lot of that in your essay, and it helps you structurally too. And so very quickly, this is a fun one about the internet, um, from the eye and internet. And it's kind of an essay about uh, how do I phrase this? Like the evolution, I guess, of the internet from somebody who uh, grew up with like MySpace and maybe even a little bit before that into present day and how it's evolved and changed. So I have no memory of inadvertently starting this essay 2 decades ago or of making this Angel Fire subpage, which I found while hunting for early traces of myself on the internet. It's it's now eroded to its skeleton. Its landing page, titled The Very Best, features a sepia-toned photo of Andy from Dawson's Creek and a dead link to a news site called The Frosted Field, which is better. There's a page dedicated to a blinking mouse GIF named Susie and a cool lyrics page with a scrolling banner and the lyrics to Smash Mouth's All Star, Shania Twain's Man, I Feel Like a Woman, and the TLC diss track No Pigeons by Sporty Thieves. On an FAQ page, there was an FAQ page. I write that I had to close down my customizable cartoon doll section as the response has been enormous. So the voice, I think, comes through really well there, but also it's really just paying attention to a particular moment and really capturing, through clear details what that era was, really brilliantly. And so I think you can lean into that in your essays, and it works really well. Okay,
Mhm.
lots of examples for that one.
No, I love that. Very, very, very well said. And then the last one is kind of quick. Hot tip. I think as writers, we can feel alone and sometimes scared to show others our work and be like, this is on my computer, and then I'm going to send it off into the ether and hope for the best. Guilty.
Yep.
This is not judgment. Been there. Um, right. But I think like our hot tip to close things off is to read your work aloud and if possible to have someone else read it. As a student of poetry, and I know Mikaela is gonna get into poetry with this as well, is you find very often that when you read your work aloud, it does not sound like how it does in your head. And you will pick up on phrases that, first of all, you pick up on typos. Let's talk about that. You pick up on typos. You pick up on phrases that don't give maybe the image that you necessarily thought they would, and you'll pick up on like the hiccups in the writing and places where you pause or there are run-on sentences. And then it's also equally, maybe a little bit more, to have someone else read out your essay aloud because they don't have kind of but although tip, like once they've done it once, like you'll never get that chance again, like they read it, because they don't have the experience that you have of sitting there and writing it, and they know what the next sentence is, and they know how it's going to end and how it's going to start and where the climax is. They don't know any of that, so they're reading it blind, and you can hear a lot and they can hear a lot from their first pass through their first read of the work. So I'd say that's my tip. Like you'll often find a lot of areas that can be tightened and sharpened and enhanced to make your essay roll off the tongue for someone who's never read it before. So my point is to share. Share when you're ready and hear what you think and what other folks think, because that's important.
Agreed, agreed. Super, super helpful. And yeah, I think it also helps you find like your voice in a way. Like you have a moment where you're like, oh, does this sound like me and what I want to say? Or am I emulating a particular like source or other writer maybe that you're quoting, like emulating them too much, or you get a feel for that too. And to kind of wrap us up, and Matthew mentioned poetry. I'm a poet first, so I have to bring this in, of course. But I think it's really poignant and connected to what we've been talking about. And this is from Soup and Sensuality by Padraig Otuma, which really was just a blog post again on Substack. But I think he said something really powerful in kind of equating poems with recipes and the way that we read them and the way that the language um, can almost have like a like deliciousness, which is very interesting in your either in your word choice or in the way that those words come together. So I'll read this quick segment of that. Okay. In the world of poetry, we are often talking about the effect of language on the reader as they are going through the text. To my mind, recipes in poetry have much in common. They evoke something beyond simply language. They evoke association, my goodness, improvisation, modification, and anticipation. There is a pleasure in reading a recipe, even one as quantityless as mine. He's mentioning a recipe he said earlier in the piece. My friends joke about my lack of quantities when I describe cooking. That speaks to the reader, even if they never end up making the food. And so I think really this section here is what I want to highlight, evoking something kind of beyond simply the language, the associations and how you're creating all of the things that we've been talking about um, to kind of tie everything together. And I think by reading your work aloud, you will really hear this or feel it or see it and get a sense of, how you're using language uniquely to you. In your essay to say what you'd like to say and to bring in other voices in a way that feels authentic for you. And I just think this is very, very fun to think about it like recipes and also the way that recipes are shared with, family and friends. And it's a very community oriented thing. And I think, like Matthew said, when we're writing, we can be very isolated and, the trope of the writer with their lamp at their desk in the dark by themselves. Um, but it is a very community kind of oriented thing because you're also looping in the reader, you're looping in us in this case as judges. Um, and everybody, like, your literary ancestry, like I mentioned at the beginning, all of that is connected and coming into this. Um, and again, I think goes beyond simply the language, like Patrick says here. So, yeah, that I
Huge,
believe, yeah,
huge.
is all we have to share in terms of notes. Matthew, I guess, yeah, anything you wanted to add to what I shared there before I kind of wrap us up?
No, I don't think I have anything necessarily to add. I think my final word of advice would be, yeah, like let your passion shine through and don't be afraid to surprise yourself. Um, and don't, and Mikaela and I kind of talked about this weeks ago, actually, but like, don't let the concept or the idea of a structured essay feel as if it's limiting you. Like, break that structure and make it new and make it, because it can, into the vehicle that you need to deliver your point. Because it can do that, and you have full autonomy to help use it to help you do that. So yeah, those are my final words of advice.
Awesome. I agree. And I guess, yeah, only thing I'll say or add is like final words, is also don't be afraid to be bold and be very
Mm.
firm in how you feel and what you believe in, because we know that we're inviting you to write about things that are going on in the world and they're impacting us very, very deeply in many, many different ways. Um, so don't feel like you have to water that down in any way, I guess is what I'm trying to say. You can be very firm and strong in your voice in what you believe in and how you are bringing hope into that conversation, how you're bringing fear and heartbreak into that conversation. All those things coexist, they don't cancel each other out. Um, and I personally would love to see how all of that kind of comes through in your essay, alongside all the things that we've mentioned, kind of more on a, a craft level. A lot of this was like craft kind of oriented advice, but um, when it comes down to it, we want to center, your voices and experiences in this as well, and how the things going on around us are impacting us and where you're gathering hope. Because I, I'll speak myself, but I'm sure Matthew feels this way too. We would love to be uplifted, and feel a sense of hope reading your work and feel inspired by it. And I'm sure we will be. So we're very excited. Awesome. Okay. To wrap us up, um, we do have our reading list here, so you'll be able to see this. We also have the prompt in here for you to work with. If you want to, use the space in the packet to kind of brainstorm, more than welcome to do that. And all the essays that I mentioned, plus a couple that Matthew wanted to recommend as well, are in here. Um, and yeah, you'll be able to look through all of this. You'll be able to watch this recording. And then, like I said, ask questions on YouTube that we will do our best to respond to. Um, and yeah, I believe that is everything. Anything that I'm missing or I should mention, Matthew?
Should we mention the fact that folks can get our advice in our next session?
Yes. So we know that this session was rescheduled, which thankfully the snow situation on my end has improved, but we had just a wild amount of snow and my internet was unstable. So apologies for that. But we also have a second session where you'll be able to kind of work with us and get feedback on a draft of sorts not related to the essay contest. So you can respond to this prompt that we have, um, or, another prompt of your choosing, uh, but just as long as it won't be the topic that you cover for the essay, just because we'll be judging and we don't, of course, want to be biased in any way. Um, So you're welcome to sign up for that session and join us, and we will have some time to kind of workshop and provide feedback and advice live. And you'll have a chance to integrate some of the things that we talked about today and kind of maybe even just test them out with a random topic and see how it goes and use that as a sort of catalyst into the essay that you submit for the contest, or if you're not planning on submitting to the contest, an essay that you write in the future. Um, yeah, and we will share more about that because we know the scheduling got a little bit mixed around. So more information about that will also be available with this recording and the package and on YouTube, so you'll be able to find it. Awesome. Okay. I believe that is all. Thank you so much, everyone. I will stop sharing my screen so you can see our faces. Appreciate everyone. Good luck. We're very much looking forward to reading everybody's work. And yeah, I guess just like I said, I think hope is an action, and essays are a way of making them so. And I definitely feel like I could use some hope these days. So we're very, very excited to read your work.
Agreed. Good luck.
Good luck. All right. Take care, everyone. Thanks so much. Okay.